Tonight, Supergirl proves that she is the most angry teenager in the entire galaxy, which, I gotta admit, I just don't buy. Green Lantern New Guardians takes the controversial opinion of religion bad, and Justice League does its best to prove to you that the Metal Men are really, really cool. I'm sorry, did I say Metal Men? I meant Dandidio. All that and more tonight on the Not So New 52. Hello everyone and welcome to episode 129 of the Not So New 52. I am your host, and it's this worst time of year. Not because it's just after Valentine's Day, but because right now, because of the way weather's been crazy, there's like a 50-50 chance at any given moment, not just any given day, like any given moment, whether it's going to be freezing cold or extremely warm. Now, where I do my recording for this show is essentially a sealed up box, and that's to try to limit out the extra noise coming through when I do my recording, but that also means not a lot of ventilation happens in here. So all I have is a single vent that is either on heater or on cooling. This was a day that started off cold, so the heat is on, and that's fine, that's fair. But over the course of the day, it has slowly gotten warmer. Which means as I've been doing this show, as I have been recording it, because I always record this part pretty much last, it has gotten so much incredibly hotter. And I hate it. I hate it so much. And I'm sure you're saying, now wait a minute, couldn't you just go down and turn off the thermostat? Couldn't you switch it to cold air? Yes, I could. Shut up. I'm just going to sit here and suffer and allow me to whine about it, because why does the weather have to be bipolar? Please explain. Why can't we just have cold days and warm days, and then whatever I wear for the day is just enough? All right. The real reason I'm doing that bit is because this is a very short episode. Maybe not like, hour 30 or anything like that, but we only have 11 comics to talk about, and I actually did pretty good at staying on time for all of them. So I'm going to pad out these intros and outros a little bit. That being said, I should tell you the comics that are in this episode. Currently, we are looking at no particular order. Justice League, Trinity of Sin Pandora, Batman and Robin, Batwoman, Birds of Prey, Harley Quinn, Red Hood and the Outlaws, Supergirl, Green Lantern New Guardians, Wonder Woman, and Animal Man. Of note out of that, well, Trinity of Sin Pandora and Justice League are part of Forever Evil Blight and Forever Evil Proper, Prime, Origins, whatever you want to call it. Supergirl is the only other one that's actually that big of a thing, because it is the issue where we begin the Supergirl being a Red Lantern chronologically. Because Green Lantern and Red Lanterns jumped the gun like earlier this month. I think that was 2 weeks ago. But chronologically, this is the first time that it's a big deal. So go check that out. Also, Animal Man is the second to last issue. Very strong. If you haven't been following along with Animal Man, go back and check all those out. Rewatch each of those episodes. Give me some runtime. I need that. Anyway, all that's coming up. Don't really have much more to say on top of that. I did say that I would tell you at the beginning of each episode that once we hit the end of the month here, because of how leap years managed to line up, I'm actually going to be switching to releasing these episodes on Tuesdays rather than Mondays. For most people, that's not going to matter at all because you come in well after the release. But for those of you who are looking for it, saying, hey, where's my new episode? 24 hours from now, you'll get your answer. So yeah, that's going to be at the beginning of March. So be sure to keep that in mind. Anyway, all that said and done, let's just jump right into the comics because I'm not good at filling time. Justice League number 28, written by Geoff Johns, art by Ivan Reis. So, last issue, Cyborg got better, he got all fixed up, and then he said, I'm going to go find the Metal Men because they can come and help me. And then he arrived at Will Magnus's place and he said, nope. So this issue picks up just saying the same thing like, yeah, no, I can't help you. I'm not going to do it. And Cyborg's like, can or won't? And he's like, both. I'm not going to do that. And we basically have him saying like, look, there's nothing I can do. I've admired your father's work, but seriously, I'm totally out of luck here. And Cyborg's like, okay, but like, why don't you tell me more about them at the very least? Because from what I know, the metal men are not connected to the grid, so therefore they're able to help in this fight. And he says how, like, oh yeah, all of the technology around the world is because of the grid, which was part of my body and is the first AI. And he's like, not the first AI, Cyborg. I made the first AI 6 months ago. And we cut to 6 months ago at the Department of Defense, where the like Secretary of Defense is storming down to Will's lab because he's been giving a ton of funding. And he's like, Will, let me in. You've got to answer to your superiors. And Will's just talking over the intercom like, nah, not going to do it. And at one point he says that he designed the door to the lab to specifications that it's not going to break unless it is hit by at least 2 millijoules, which I did look up. That's not a lot. And he specifically says a stick of dynamite, but like it's less than that. But regardless, Secretary of Defense is like, fine, whatever. You better be doing good stuff in there. And then on the inside, Magnus is like, well, that interruption aside, and he's talking into his little tape recorder. That interruption aside, people suck. People suck all the time. That's the real problem with everything. Society, man. If we want to make things cool, if we want to make things good, robots. That's the way to go. So I have created and designed this thing called a responsometer, which is essentially making it so that people, these robots that I make are going to be able to think in their own terms. They're going to be able to make real decisions. And I've designed them so that if I put them into the pools of molten metals, they will bond with it and they'll be able to like change their shape to these metals. So yeah, I've all of it set. I'm ready to start the first thing. And he dunks the responsometers into the metals. And we get gold, we get tin, we get lead, we get iron, we get mercury, and we get platinum. And as they come out, they all start like exhibiting little bits of personality. Gold is cocky, tin is bashful, lead is stupid, iron is like a musclehead, mercury is a dick, and platinum's the girl. So as they all start slowly like forming up their bodies, Will's like, what in the heck is going on? They got personalities. I just want them to be able to think for themselves. That's crazy. But they introduce themselves as the Metal Men. And he's just like, okay, all right, well, this is weird that you guys have so much personality going on. And they all just start kind of talking back and forth with each other, just like saying like, oh yeah, I'm gold. I'm the most precious alloy. And Tin's like, oh, I can do stuff too. And Lead doesn't even get to introduce himself because he talks too slow. Iron's like, hey, you got the pay-per-view on in here? Totally ready to watch. And then Platinum is, of course, Platinum. Oh, and Mercury's just like being real douchey and cocky if he can like fly around. And he's like, oh my God, you humans are so slow. Screw it. So Will gets fed up. He's like, all right, everybody line up. I want to talk to you. And they're like, why should we listen to you, man? Like, what power do you have over us? Like, come on, we're all equals here, right? He's just like, no, I made you. I designed you. You're supposed to listen to my commands. And Mercury's like, oh, I see. We're supposed to do whatever the man says, guys. Sounds to me like a robot revolution time. Who's in? And Platinum's like, we're not going to do that. Stop that. So at that point, there's a few more little back and forths. Will eventually snaps and says like, look, none of you can feel anything. And they're just like, we think we can. And he's like, okay, that's not what I meant. You're not supposed to be able to feel anything. This is weird. This is not supposed to go. And then all of a sudden, the door to his lab busts down. Of course, it's the Secretary of Defense because he's like, yeah, no, you have to let me in. What the hell are you doing? But then he looks over and he sees the Metal Men are online and they all go like super blank-faced, like they're not showing that they are anything special. And then he's just like, oh, hey, great, awesome. So these things were designed to go out into like toxic work environments and like do search and rescue, right? And Will's like, yep, that's their design goal. And he's like, cool, we're going to send them into a battlefield and see if they can assassinate some people. And Will's like, that's not what they're made for. You can't do that. And so at that point, the Metal Men are like, yeah, we don't want to do that. Bye. And they just run. They just leave. And so Secretary of Defense is like, all right, all of our men go and track down those guys, see what we can do. However, somewhere, somehow, a prototype version of the responsometer is taken by someone else and dropped into a vat of toxic waste. And he says, well, let's give this a shot. And then all of a sudden starts reacting. So back at Will's place, he's running through a bunch more like designs of the metal men, trying to figure out what in the hell went on here. And he notices that his wastebasket is moving as he's tossing papers into it. He's like, oh, that's tin. Hey, what's going on, man? What are you doing here? And he's like, oh, well, we're all here. And he's like, oh, okay, everyone, come on out. It's safe. You're okay. And they're all just like, did we do something wrong? Are we like persona non grata now? And he's like, no, you didn't do anything wrong, but like, I didn't expect you guys to be this way, and now I got to figure out what to do with you, and like, it's a whole thing. But then all of a sudden, his wall to his apartment breaks open, and outside is a giant thing made of toxic waste. It's chemo, for anyone who's familiar with the lore. They don't call him that, but it's chemo. And he starts spewing toxic waste at Will, and Will's... Apparently the metal men just immediately leap into action. Their whole thing is they have no concern for themselves. Rule number 1 is take care to make sure everyone around is safe. And then rule number 2, once everyone is safe, except for themselves, they are to neutralize the threat, whatever that may be. So immediately all the metal men just start diving into Chemo's body. And Will's just like, you're all going to die. This is going to kill all of you. Like, you're not going to be able to withstand the chemical bonds or whatever. And all of them are just like, whatever, we're heroes, we're doing it. So they all leap in, they all end up, quote-unquote, dying, and yeah, Will's upset about that. So we cut back to when he's talking to Cyborg, and he's just like, yeah, no, they were a failure, and they were destroyed because of it, and they just wouldn't listen to me, so that's why I won't bring them back. And Cyborg looks over, and he sees the 6 responsometers just, like, sitting on a desk, and he's like, dude, you can literally just dump them into new metals and they're going to be fine. This is clearly not a thing of you saying they're a failure, because any help right now would be better than no help at all. The reason you're not doing it is because you like them. You don't want to see them sacrifice themselves and die that way again. And Will's like, yeah, they were cool. I don't want to lose them like that again. And Cyborg's like, okay, well, what would they want? And he's like, all right, fine. Let's bring the Metal Men back online. So that's the issue. It really is just a Metal Men origin story because Dandidio's in charge of DC at this point. So yeah, it's fine. It's a decent enough origin story. I do think it's weird the fact that this doesn't seem to square. If I remember correctly, wasn't Platinum like a nominee for the Justice League like 10 issues ago? Not even. That happened, right? I'm not just making that up. I would have to check again to see how that squared out, but like it doesn't make any sense that she was there and then also died somehow immediately after being made. I don't know. It just seems like a weird lineup to me. Overall, it's a fine origin story. Like I said, it's just the Metal Men. Yeah, I guess I'd say it's like a 7. There's not much to talk about because it doesn't advance the plot of Forever Evil at all. It's not like its own little tie-in thing. It literally is just, we know we can't make a Metal Men series, so we're just going to put this in here and hope that we can get a little bit of interest going. So, yeah, it's like a 7. It's fine. It's not awful. It's just another part of whatever the hell Cyborg's doing on his little trying to take down the crime syndicate story. Trinity of Sin, Pandora, number 8, written by Ray Fawkes, art by Francis Portela. So last issue, I believe, was Constantine, where everything went to hell from Constantine's perspective. But this issue takes place in the before and after that, so honestly, you could skip the whole Constantine issue. Anyway, we pick up in Nanda Parbat. Pandora's walking us through like, yeah, we're inside this place and we're here to wipe out Blight. And she's like, wait, no, we did that. That was a different thing. We're here to rescue the Justice League Dark. No, wait, hold on. Constantine's just here for Zatanna. I don't know why we're here. Honestly, this storyline doesn't make any sense. That's pretty much what she says directly. So they're in Nanda Parbat, and as they're walking around, they point out the dead man is inside of Sea King's body, and he's also in the midst of it. So he comes out, and he's looking around, and he's just like, yeah, all right, looks like you're doing a pretty good job at whatever it is you guys are doing here. And they're like, yeah, totally. So we are taking this magical energy from all the mystics in the world, and we're using that to help the crime syndicate because they say that this big bad enemy is coming to destroy the world, so we're going to use that to fight back against that. And Deadman's like, right, yeah, I knew all about that, totally. That's definitely a thing I know. And he keeps on, like, doing the big stand-up thing whenever Faust is like, oh, yes, you've inspired us. And he's just like, shut up, Faust, you suck. And he's like, oh, man. So at that point, Nick Necro steps up, and he's just like, dude, you can drop the act. We know you're not you. And he's like, what do you mean I'm not me? And Faust is like, what do you mean he's not him? I scanned him. It is him. He's like, yeah, no, totally. So Sea King goes to lunge at Nick Necro, and he does, like, some enchantment that shows it's actually Dead Man inside. And Constantine, or Nick Necro immediately says, Constantine's got to be in here. His whole crew is. So Faust sends a magic spell to knock out Dead Man, and he's like, hey, yeah, but, like, his Sea King's brain is actually in there too, so that's why I was tricked. I'm not totally incompetent, okay? I'm not. So at that point, security starts going off. The entirety of the Constantine issue happens. And then Pandora is also like, hey, all of us, we have to stay together. We gotta keep this together as best we can. So at that point, immediately all of them are overrun with, like, demons that Faust and Necro are bringing in. They're super unable to deal with it. And Pandora's looking over. She sees Zoriel standing nearby. And Zoriel's just standing there and just, like, chilling. He's not doing anything. He looks over at Pandora, gives her a smile, and she's like, oh, okay, I get it. I gotta get it. There's something going on here. So she blocks a punch from Nick Necro, and he's just like, hold up, I surrender. Seriously, go ahead, capture us. All of us will go willingly. So they're all brought into the containment center that Constantine was put into. They're all zapped up. And Faust, like, puts a blindfold over Pandora, saying, I don't like the way she's looking at me. And immediately just disintegrates, being like, sorry, it's part of my curse. I'm forced to witness everything. And he's like, fine, whatever. He's stuck. So at that point, again, the whole Constantine issue's happening. It just jumps forward an hour later and says, like, well, Nick Necro, it seems I had to save your ass from Constantine, showing that I am the better sorcerer. So they start running the tests on Nightmare Nurse, and it sucks out a huge amount of magical energy, 22 megathomatons, and they're just like, cool, did it work? Not in that we got out magic, but, like, is she still alive? Because this thing needs to be, like, rechargeable. We need to be able to keep using it. And we cut back to her, and she is definitely worse for wear, but she is alive. So they're like, great, we did it, awesome. We now have a rechargeable thing, but, like, she is almost dead. So it's going to take a really long time to recharge her. Let's see if we can't go out and make some adjustments. So Necro goes out, and Swamp Thing tries to plead with him, being like, please, we're people. And Constantine's immediately just like, don't bother, man. He's not even going to care you. He once cursed a man for stealing a beer. Like, he's the worst. So at that point, Pandora just starts, like, calling him out. He's just like, she's like, hey, you know, I'm immortal, you know that, but I also I'm able to see, like, a bunch of stuff, and I can see that you were, like, once a good person, but you always wanted to fit in, and, like, remember that time there was a junkyard dog and all your friends started throwing rocks at it? You didn't want to throw rocks at it, but still you picked up a rock, and Nick Necro's like, okay, well, you know what? I'm testing on you now, because you just brought up a very bad thing for me, so yeah, I'm running my tests on you. So he unlatches her from her current wheel prison thing, latches her into a new one, and she's just like, look, I get it, you the world can feel unfair and cruel, and you're inflicting pain on others to try to make up for your own thing, but, like, it's not going to work, it's not going to help you. And Necro just stabs a knife into her chest and just like, dude, shut up, I don't want to hear this. So he actually claims that they're the good guys because of that big enemy coming to destroy the world. He's like, yeah, no, we're going to stop that. We're going to save the world, even if it is under crime syndicate control. So yeah, screw you, Pandora. So anyway, they set up the thing, and then all of a sudden, Pandora's power starts overflowing, and she turns into her Super Saiyan form with her gold costume and whatever that she had before, and she just immediately breaks out of her restraints. And the whole thing starts exploding. Nick Necro goes running back into his, like, little safety chamber thing with Felix. And then Pandora teleports out. Her Phantom Stranger, and I believe her name was Cassandra, one of the random civilians that was captured like 7 issues ago. So at that point, Felix is like, this whole place is going to blow, and it's all because of you, because you're stupid, and you can't dispel whatever magic she's got going on. You suck, Nick Necro. And we cut to the South Pacific, where Pandora teleported the 3 of them to, and she's like, I did it. I used my power, and I got us all free, and I teleported us all to safety. wait, where's everyone else? And Phantom Stranger's like, they probably had some anti-teleportation spells, and you were probably too far away for your power to, like, affect them. And she's like, oh, crap, that place is going to blow up. We got to get back in there now. So, yeah, that's where the issue ends. And then it picks up in, like, Justice League Dark or something. It's okay. I mean, I don't know. I really feel like this tie-in should have ended. Like, just, like, what are we doing now? I get that we're just kind of pacing it out and saying, like, okay, it's going to last as long as Forever Evil lasts, but, like, it doesn't have to. You don't have to do that. You can just tell your story and then it ends. Here's the thing, and this is a problem I have with any comic that releases, like, in a monthly schedule. They're so concerned about it lining up with whatever's going on in the universe because it's people who are reading the weekly comics. They're like, oh, they don't want something that's going to be like spoiling an event 2 weeks later or something like that. And I get it. You don't want to spoil anything. But like once they're in trade, and even once the comics are released, it doesn't matter. You know, like you don't have to stretch an event out because you don't want to like spoil something. Because as soon as it's done, it's not going to matter. It doesn't, like, no one's going to look back and be like, oh, well, it sucks that they spoiled it beforehand. Like, no, people are going to remember it by whether or not the story was good. And the fact that we are on, I checked, part 13 of Forever Evil Blight, it's too much. You bit off more than you could chew here. It's just too much. So, yeah, no, I mean, it's not that it's a bad story inherently, but, like, we killed Blight. That happened 4 issues ago. What are we still doing here? So, yeah, overall, I'd say this issue's probably like a 6. It doesn't do anything for me. It's just kind of like padding in any meaningful regard. It's not bad, though. But, like, overall, it's just every single issue just feels like this isn't the tie-in anymore. There shouldn't be a reason why I have to jump between each book to read this. You should have, if you wanted to do this, it should have been a weekly miniseries. You shouldn't have been interrupting all of these books and forcing me to go across the board for them, you know? So yeah, a little frustrating in that regard, but it's done now. What are you going to do? Birds of Prey, number 28, written by Christy, Marx, art by Romano, Molenaar, Daniel Sampere, and Scott McDaniel. So this is a Gothtopia tie-in. Last issue it said it was, at least on a bunch of websites, but it wasn't really. This time, definitely is. So last issue we had it end with Condor, Strix, and Babs all realizing, hey, something's going on in Gotham. And then Canary is just like, screw that, I love my husband, I quit the team. So we pick up in Gotham where Strix is now named Artemis, Condor is now named Eagle, and Batgirl is now named Bluebell. And Gotham is all happy, shiny. And Strix is looking up at the blimps of Gotham and is just enraptured by them because in this reality, she loves balloons. Balloons are super cool and awesome and great. So we have an ice cream driver guy come up and say, hey, Bluebell, how do you feel about one of my endorsements with your team, the Wings of Truth, instead of the Birds of Prey? And she's like, we don't do endorsements, ice cream guy. So at that point, Eagle shows up and just like, hey, you know, I had this weirdest feeling when I was up there. I thought I remembered something that I forgot, but now that I've come back down here, boy, this city sure is beautiful. And Bluebell's like, right, I know. So at that point, Canary just comes in on a motorcycle. Her name is Warbler, which is the worst name I've ever heard in my life. But she's just like, Batgirl's just like, Warbler, where have you been? And she's just like, what do you mean? I've been here the whole time. And they're like, you're right, you have been, haven't you? Because we're all a happy family and the Wings of Truth. So they start just like first I guess they are due at a children's charity circus where Batgirl and Strix do like a trapeze thing. Condor does juggling with his mind, and Canary breaks a bunch of piñatas with her sonic scream, and it rains candy over all the children. So that evening, They're all sitting together. They're still wearing their costumes. They're all sitting in a home together. And they're like, let's watch a movie, team. How about action or romance or an action romance? But then all of a sudden they look out the window and the bat signal's gone up. So they're like, oh, Batman needs us. So they started driving to the scene. But then the events of Detective Comics 27 happen, and 28. And Batman's gone crazy. He keeps on saying, this isn't real. None of this is real. Everything's fake. So they take Batman into custody, and Bluebell's like, oh, if there's anything we can do, you just let us know, Catbird. And Catbird's like, okay, sure, whatever. So at that point, they go off around the city. They fight what barely any crime there is in Gotham, and they save people from perilous situations, literally a school bus dangling off a bridge. And they get a dispatch saying, hey, the events of Detective Comics 28 happened. Batman and Poison Ivy are breaking out of Arkham. Come and help. So they all show up along with Catbird, whatever Batwoman's called, and whatever Talon's called. And Poison Ivy binds up Warbler and is just like, you're blind, man. You don't even see the truth. You're all filled up with poison. So Batman and Poison Ivy start taking out the entire team that's there. We don't see the end of it because we haven't gotten that issue yet, but they're just like, oh no, well, guess they're gone. Who wants Chinese, everybody? So they go back home, and as they're asleep on the couch, someone comes up and sprays something into Warbler's face, and she wakes up and she realizes, wait a minute, my name's not Warbler, it's Canary. Also, the Wings of Truth are the birds of prey. What the hell's going on around here? And she looks around at this horrible, dungy place that they're in, and she sees standing next to them is Ra's al Ghul and one of his henchmen named, I don't know, Alton, I think, something like that. So Canary has no idea who this is. She's like, who the hell are you? What's going on? And Ra's explains the basis behind whatever the Gothtopia is. Scarecrow, toxins, hallucinations, all the gist. But he's immune because he's immortal, and he came up with an antidote, and that's what he sprayed Canary with, but it only lasts an hour. And he's like, look, I'm giving you this. I'm letting you have that. You can get your team out of Gotham in the meantime, but that's it. That's all I can offer you. And in return, all I want you to do is stand aside when me and Mother Eve are going to have our big fight. And Canary's like, she's been super cool to me and I don't know you, so no, I'm not going to do that. And he's just like, all right, fair enough. I'll sweeten the pot. And he pulls out a little vial and says, this is from my Lazarus pools. It is super, weakened down version, but it will be enough to pull your husband out of his coma permanently and forever. I give you to this. So here you go. You take it. Now, again, stay out of my way when the fight comes. And Canary's like, okay, I'm listening more, but hold on. All I see here is Condor and Strix. Where's Batgirl? And he's like, she's got her own book. She's got to deal with it over there. I can't help you with that part, but you can get them out of here. So she hops on her bike. She manages to get them down the street a little bit, I guess. And then she wakes them up and says, Eagle, Artemis, we got to go. We got to call from Batgirl that way out in the Gotham Bay, there's some burglar thieves that are getting away. We got to head out there quick. Come, let's hop in the boat. So they all hop in the boat and they head way out into the bay, hoping that the effects are going to wear off quickly. They start getting suspicious because they don't see anything there. And so they all start to fight. But then just at that moment, they all snap out of it and they are free of their hallucinations. So back on Mother Eve's ship barge thing, she sits with Kurt for a little while and says oh, I lied to them and said that Poison Ivy gave me immunity when she fought me, but I can't tell them the truth that it was Ra's al Ghul, but my husband, I could save him now. So at that point, Batgirl shows up because she's finished whatever's going on in her book, and it literally says, see Detective Comics number 29 on sales next month. And Batgirl's like, yeah, look, here's the thing. I remember you showing up despite the fact that you specifically quit the team last issue. What was that about? And she's like, yeah, no, I realized it was a mistake in between issues and I wanted to join you, so I went for it. I should have never turned my back on the team. And Batgirl's like, yeah, that's great, but you can't really expect to lead the team now, can you? You gave it up in a heartbeat. That's not leadership material. And Dinah's like, you're right. You're going to lead the team. And Batgirl's like, huh? No, I've got too much stuff going. I've got my own book, man. I can't be expected to lead the team. I've got too much. My life's a disaster right now. And she's like, oh, wait, this is all the same stuff you said when I told you that you needed to lead the team. And Dinah's like, right. And you didn't let me off the hook. So Batgirl's like, all right, fine. Officially, I'll be the leader of the team. But I'm going to be in my own book. And she's like, all right, whatever. Yeah, that's fine with me. So at that point, they all head inside. And then Dinah once again sits next to Kurt and says, I didn't tell her about Ra's al Ghul, because I finally have a chance to save my husband's life. And she pulls out the vial, and we'll see if she does anything about it. But yeah, that's the issue. God, I don't care about Gothopia. Like, I really don't care about... Here's the thing. The Detective Comics arc itself, the 3 issues going on there, it's fine. It's a fine enough Scarecrow story. I don't have a problem with it. But, like, tie-in-wise, this is some of the laziest stuff I've ever seen, because nobody has to do anything. Like, across all of the books that have had tie-ins, I think maybe, like, one of them, Batgirl, is the only one who went the entire issue and said, like, yeah, no, it's, like, a whole thing that's affecting these characters. Everyone else is just like, oh, wait a minute, things are weird. Psst, all right, I'm immune now. And they just moved on with their plot. So, yeah, it's just not a good event. It's a bad one. But overall, I'd say this issue's probably... Honestly, it's pretty weak, if I'm being honest. The fact that last issue we had she quit the team and she's never coming back. Oh, never mind. She realized she was wrong about 20 minutes later. Oops. Yeah, it's felt cheap. It definitely, and obviously she was never going to quit the team for real, but like I expected more than 3 pages of fallout from that, you know? So yeah, honestly, I gotta give it like a 5.5. And it sucks because I definitely like Christy Marx on this book. She does a great job with a lot of the characters, but like this issue just felt like a complete waste of time. Like nothing happened here except the super necessary fact you need to know of Canary has gotten something that can get her husband out of a coma. So it's not skippable because of that like 1 page. So yeah, frustrating, but mediocre. Supergirl number 28, written by Tony Bedard, art by Yildiray Cinar. So last issue, Lobo was stomping around the block, which is Shea Veritas' place at the center of the earth, and then Supergirl showed up and got super duper pissed about it. This is the beginning of the Red Lantern saga for Supergirl. It just straight up is. So we open up on Planet Yzmalt, getting a recap of how the Red Lantern sent out a whole bunch of red rings flying around the universe like a while ago, a few weeks back. And then we cut back to the fight between Supergirl and Lobo. And Lobo, his narration is just like 100%. I came here to get information about the other Lobo, the quote-unquote fake Lobo. And all of a sudden, I get my ass handed to me by this girl who's just punching harder than anything I've ever seen before. But I've always learned that you can't fight the wind. You just got to embrace it. So I got to, like, use her anger and temper against her. So at this point, Lobo gets punched into a room where there's, like, a giant statue of that weird creature that Shea talked about last issue. And he's like, whatever, not going to deal with that now. Hey, Supergirl, come at me. And she charges him. He blasts her back with like a sonic weapon or something like that. And Supergirl's like, okay, now I'm angry. And so she blasts him through a bunch more walls. And they are just immediately going through like the entirety of the block, like causing widespread damage. And Shea contacts the teleporter room and is just like, hey, can we get them the hell out of here? Because they are wrecking the place. So at that point, we see that weird, creepy thing that Shea talked about is lurking in the shadows. I don't know what it is. We'll get to it, I'm assuming at some point. So as Supergirl is about to straight up, like, heat vision and blast Lobo into some walls, Lobo taunts her and just like, hey, you threw one solid punch, like, before you killed me, and ever since then you've been pulling your punches. You punch like a girl. And Supergirl's like, oh, hell no. So she's about to go all out. Immediately Shea's like, well, teleport him out. this is going to cause too much damage. Get him up there. So they immediately get teleported back up into the the Antarctic. And Lobo's like, oh, thank God that worked. I knew that Shay wouldn't let that much destruction become her lab or whatever, so she would teleport us out. So Lobo whistles for his ship, which then uses its cannons or whatever to shoot Supergirl down. And he's just like, hey, here's the thing. I need you to shut up. I had to get you pissed off so that we would get teleported out. But now I don't want you to fight me anymore. I want us to be able to talk. And she's just like, ragga fragga blagga, I'm not going to talk to my fists, is literally what she says. So he starts jetting at super speed across the earth. Supergirl's given chase. And he's just like, hey, I read your file from Shay Veritas' computer. Turns out she called you a time bomb. Seriously, she thinks of that of you. It's a waste of your talent to spend your time here. And I used to be like you. I was mad. I was bitter. I was alone. Let's talk about this. So they make their way to New York City, specifically right next to where she lived. And Lois like, yeah, in your file it said you lived here. I figured you wouldn't want to blow up your hometown, so we can just talk for a minute. And he straight up says look, I've been where you were. You're super strong. You don't know where you belong. Work with me. We can do some cool stuff together. You can be out there in space. Earth is too tiny for you, and you can figure out who you really are. What do you say? It sounds like a good deal for you. And Supergirl's just like, I'm sorry, you just offered me, you tried to kill me and now you're offering me a job? And he's just like, yeah, totally. And then Supergirl just immediately unloads saying I am so sick of people telling me that they know what I need. None of you, not Cal, not Shay, none of you know what I need. And you know what? I'm done with this. So we cut into Shaban, if you remember Silver Banshee. She lives in the area. Go into her apartment. She hears the explosions from their fighting. And she's just like, okay. Well, that's something I should probably go and check out. So she starts running outside. Supergirl is straight up saying you know what? Lobo is kind of right, though. My life's been nothing but pain ever since I've been on Earth. So maybe it is time for me to just bail again. But seriously, screw this. Why is everything just awful for me all the time? And so Lobo manages to flip Supergirl over his shoulder and throw her into a building. He calls his ship back again. Supergirl just heat visions it in half. And he's like, dude, do you have any idea how much I paid for that? More than you could possibly imagine. How dare you? And she's just like, oh, don't worry. It's not going to matter for you very long. And so she lands a few more punches and seemingly kills Lobo again. Obviously not, but definitely takes him out. And she's just yelling, saying fine, Earth, I get it. I'm not welcome here. I don't belong anywhere. And then all of a sudden, one of those red rings, which was bouncing somewhere around Earth's atmosphere, comes down, lands next to Kara, and it says, Kara Zor-El of Krypton, you have great rage in your heart. You are now a Red Lantern. So we see Shaban walking through the wreckage of the fight. She walks past Lobo and just all right, well, that's not something I need to worry about. And as she gets closer to the center of the fires and whatnot, she hears this ba-bum, ba-bum, ba-bum. And as she looks up, she says, Kara, is that you? And as we see Kara, she is 100% turned into Red Lantern mode. So next issue, we deal with that some more. So this is I guess you would call it the prologue, because next part is officially part 1 of the Red Daughter of Krypton. It is where we will be dealing with that, along with in the Red Lanterns book. It's not really an event. It's just more of a initiative of we need to give Supergirl something to do. So yeah, I can't believe that Supergirl is the angriest person on Earth. Don't get me wrong. Clearly she's pissed off. Clearly she's enraged. Clearly it is this whole big thing. But I don't know. Nothing in the book tells me that she is the most pissed off person, not just on Earth, but in the sector, in the entirety of our galaxy. She is the most pissed off creature. That I don't think they did enough to really set that up there. Don't get me wrong. It's something. But setup-wise, I don't think I'm as happy with it as it is, what it's going to end up with. Beyond that, rating-wise, art's a little bit weak in places for me. Especially, I typically enjoy Yildiray Cinar's art, so seeing a couple of these panels just be significantly weaker than I expect from him or her. I'm not actually sure what Yildiray is, but yeah, I'm gonna say this is probably like a 6.5. It's not quite standout, but it is decent still. I like what we end up with. I think that the setup is just kind of a little bit undeserved. Like, it doesn't feel like we earned Red Lantern status of Rage. I feel like we could have gone a little bit deeper there, but hey, c'est la vie. Batman and Robin number 28, written by Peter Tomasi, art by Patrick Gleason. So last issue, Two-Face got captured by the mob and is being put on TV as a public execution because no more freaks in Gotham. So we have Batman in the Batmobile, and he's basically trying to get Erin, who is bound up in the passenger seat, to tell him where in the hell they're keeping Two-Face, because he doesn't have much information there. And she's like, oh, you want to turn right here? And Batman's like, no. Yeah, that's going to waste more time. Come on, I can tell you're lying. Be honest. And all over Gotham, we see different people, part of the rogues galleries, watching this public execution of Two-Face. And they're basically saying, like, now Gotham, you don't know who we are. We're secretive about our things, but we're going to go ahead and take out Two-Face. And it's going to be very gruesome, but it's a warning message to all the freaks in Gotham. Get out of here. We don't want your kind. Go on, get. So we see that Erin says, like, oh, he's in the courthouse. That's where he's at. Fine, you got it out of me. And Batman zooms in on the footage where he does see, like, the seal for the justice system in the background. And he zooms specifically in on the letter U. And he's like, in the actual courthouse, that's a V. It's not a U. U is only used when they're doing like a fake version of it. So yeah, no, you're lying again, Erin. And at this point, the thing says, or the people start setting fire to Two-Face as he's on the witness stand, and just like, all right, burn it to the ground. So at that point, Batman then just like hucks a hard left, and Erin's like, what are you doing? The courthouse is over there. And he's just like, no, you lied again, and I know where he is now, so bye. And he hits the ejector seat, and she lands on top of a cop car, of which the cops immediately like arrest her, and she's like, I want my phone call. So Batman realizes that they're at a TV studio nearby. He busts in through the roof and immediately saves Two-Face, but now they're under heavy gunfire and actual fire. So at this point, as Batman's trying to stop all of the people, he tosses his coin over to Two-Face, and Batman tries to basically talk him down. He's just like, dude, you were Harvey Dent, man. You were the best of us. We were on a mission. We could have done something good. Can't you channel your pain to continue to do something good? And Two-Face straight up says, oh, like you did, Bruce? And Batman just gives a straight like, I'm sorry, what? So Two-Face is just like, yeah, no, you're the one who pushed me into the DA job. Like, I know it was you. It's not that hard to figure out with how things lined up here. But like, yeah, this is what I've earned for my sins, for all the crimes that I committed to get here. So yeah, this is who I am now. Harvey Dent is not the way you remember him. He's gone. And Bruce is like, I can't believe that. I need you to not do that. And he's like, that's tough. That's the way it is. And then Bruce says, hey, your coin, you keep on focusing on the two sides. You got to focus on the third. And he's like, what in the hell? Coins only have two sides, you idiot. What are you talking about? He's like, nah, the edge of the coin where the two sides meet. That's the third option that binds opposites together. You got to embrace that. So at that point, Two-Face manages to get a Tommy gun from one of the gangsters, and he starts shooting it at a bunch of different people, saying like, oh, I'm going to burn all your faces off. So Batman breaks open a water tower, and it floods the TV studio, and Two-Face is like, always putting out fires, Batman, even when it's supposed to burn. And then we cut back to the last flashback, which seems to be like a mid-20s, early 20s. Harvey Dent is at a college celebration that Bruce Wayne is throwing at his mansion. And Bruce is like, I almost graduated. May as well just go ahead and do this. And he ends up introducing Harvey to Gilda. And he goes off to deal with Erin and her sister, who the McKillens are actually at the party as well. And then Gilda starts talking to Harvey and it's just like, oh, yeah, I want to be in marketing one day. What about you? And he's like, oh, I'm going to be a famous attorney. I could use you to get my image looking better. And she's like, oh, well, I'm always happy to be used. And he's like, oh, well, all right, let's get this going. So they've got a romance going. Cut back to now, and Gordon is standing outside of the TV studio. He's got his gun drawn, and he's telling his cops where to be. And all of a sudden, the door just bursts down because of the water pressure. And also, Harvey just comes out with the stream, punches Gordon in the face, grabs Gordon's gun, and shoots him in the shoulder. And at that point, Harvey's like, oh, sorry. Gordon first is like, you were the best of us, Harvey. Literally says the line from the movie. And Harvey's like, no, you were the only good man left. Now, either take me in or let me go. And he's just like, it's not that simple, Harvey. And he's like, yeah, well, it is for me. And Harvey flips his coin, and it slips out of his hand because of how wet and muddy it is. And it lands in the mud on its edge. And Harvey's like, oh, God. So he takes the gun, he aims it at Jim's face, he screams, he doesn't pull the trigger. He does it again, he doesn't pull the trigger. Goes for a third time. Batman finally throws a batarang, knocks the gun out of his hand, and Harvey steals a motorcycle and starts driving off. Batman has to give medical attention to Jim because he had an artery nicked, so at this point, he manages to get away. So, time passes, we cut to Erin is in jail, and she's literally running like a seminar, and she repeats the things that Bruce said before about two wolves inside of us and blah, blah, blah. And she's like, yeah, well, because we're in here, we know which wolf we feed. So who's with me? And being an asshole all the time. And then we cut over to Harvey. We see that he's cleaning himself up after the fight, and he goes to, there's a portrait of Gilda on his mantle. He sets his coin on the side next to it and spins it. He loads up his revolver, and before the coin is even finished spinning, he holds the gun up to his head, says it feels like my lucky day, and it says blam, and there is blood. So seems like he killed himself. So the final page here is Batman arrives at the GCPD headquarters with a new bat signal. He signals for Jim to go up to the roof, and he's just like, oh yeah, hey, thanks. Two-Face ruined our last one. I was wondering how we were going to fix that. And he's like, yeah, don't worry about it. We're fighting this war together. And he shines a light in the sky. And that's the end of the Two-Face arc. So I'm actually really curious about how this fits together. Like, did Two-Face kill himself for a while there? Like, the next time we see him, are they going to explain, like, no, actually, He shot himself in a way that seemed fatal, but actually it only erased his memory of who Batman was. So, I don't know. It seems like a big swing for an end there that feels like it would have needed a little bit more. Like, I would have heard about that, Like, this is the issue where Two-Face kills himself, but clearly not. So, yeah. Beyond that, I don't know. This whole Two-Face arc, I'm not sure I get what the theme of it was. I don't feel like there was one. I feel like it was a loose collection of, like, nobody is ever truly good. I guess that's the way it's supposed to be played. Like, even the heroes of the story have a downside to them, and that it works for what Two-Face is, of, like, a DA with this evil criminal streak now. But, like, I don't know. I feel like the entirety of the arc didn't really work to that. It didn't really work to its strength there. And then having this final thing be, there's a third option. It works for this issue, but I don't feel like it explains the arc overall. Like, it doesn't say, like, oh, there's always a different path we could take. But, like, I don't know. I didn't feel like we were playing with anything in terms of, like, destiny or fates or, like, being forced into a decision. So, I mean, I guess if you look at it, Harvey felt like he was forced in the decision to avenge Gilda, and then the McKillens felt like they were forced into it to take out Dent. I kind of get it. It's just, I don't know. It didn't come off as strong as I would have liked. 6.5 in general. It's not great. It's not awful. It's just an okay issue. Again, I just feel like it's a big swing here at the end that I feel like I would have heard about if it were actually anything that mattered. Instead, it feels like this whole thing is just kind of going to be forgotten about, and we're never really going to deal with the fact that Harvey straight up knows who Batman is. So yeah, no, it's an all right little arc, but definitely looking forward to the next part where I think we start the hunt for Robin again. So tune in next time. Batwoman number 28, written by Marc Andreyko, art by Jeremy Haun. So last issue, Kate went through a pretty bad fight with Wolf Spider and had to go back home to Maggie's, dripping with blood pretty much. And then Maggie's daughter caught her and scared her. So we have two different timelines going on across these pages here. It's literally like panel 1, panel 2, panel 3, panel 4. Odd number panels are timeline A. Even numbers are timeline B. So just to make it easier to talk about, we have the 12 hours ago where we see Kate being caught by Maggie's kid, just like covered in blood and trying to clean herself up. Maggie also walks in and just like, okay, this is bad. This isn't something I want. And she takes her kid. Kate goes out to try to like say like, hey, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't. And she's just like, don't, just deal with yourself. I'm going to go take care of my kid right now. So Kate's upset that she scared Maggie's kid. Meanwhile, in current day, she's down at a local seedy bar and is just beating the ever-loving crap out of everybody there, saying like, tell me what you need to know. Tell me where Wolf Spider is. Someone's got to know something about where he's at. So that's the whole gist of what's going on there. We see Kate is like, okay, I have to go make this right with Maggie after the next morning. She goes into the GCPD. She's got, bandages on her face and stuff like that. The cop there's just like, Jesus, Kate, what happened to you? You look like you got in a fight. And she's like, no, I fell off my bike. So as she's walking through the bullpen, I guess you want to call it, whatever it's called, she comes across Evan, the guy from like 2 issues ago, and he's also been beaten up. And she's like, what happened to you? And he's like, oh, what happened to you? And he's like, bike thing. Anyway, she's like, oh yeah, my house got burgled or robbed or whatever it is, and he beat me up. But like the only thing he was there for was to steal a painting. It was so weird. And she's like, oh my God, you were there? And he's like, yeah, totally. Anyway, you want to go get a cappuccino or something? And she just runs off, heads back into the back room to where Sawyer is. As she knocks on Maggie's door, Maggie's daughter answers. Her name is Jamie, by the way. And immediately Jamie's like, and she's like, And Jamie's like, oh, you scared me last night, And she's like, oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to scare you. I didn't even know you were there. I'm a friend of your mom's. And he's like, yeah, you're my mom's girlfriend. I know. I get it. And she's like, oh, okay, you're pretty smart, huh? And she's like, yeah, totally. Why were you there? And she's like, well, I mean, you scared me too. If that counts for anything. And she's like, really? And she's like, yeah, no, totally. I didn't even know you were going to be there. And then like, you just stood up in the doorway. It scared me. And at that point, Maggie walks out and just like, hey, Jamie, I told you to stay close. Sees Kate there, and Jamie's like, oh, did you? Mommy, I scared Kate too. Isn't that funny? And she's like, yeah, no, totally. So Kate wants to talk in private. Maggie has an officer take her kid down to the vending machines. And then as soon as Kate tries to start apologizing, Maggie just stops her and just like, look, I get it. I understand. There's like mistakes and stuff. I know you would never hurt my daughter, but you have a lot of bad things in your life. Like, you have not dealt with any of them. And Kate's like, hey, don't worry. Like, I know this has been like a history of things before, but it'll never happen again. And she's like, look, my kid is a kid. Like, either she'll forget about it, she'll bounce back, she'll be fine. I'll make sure of that. But you've had an entire lifetime of traumas and like fights and stuff. You've lost not only your sister, but your mother too. You never dealt with them. Like, you still have all of this baggage here, and it's just gonna keep making things worse. And she's like, what are you saying? She's like, I think you should go see a therapist. She's like, oh, so you think I'm crazy? It's like, no, I don't think you're crazy. I think that you have like post-traumatic stress, and you have never properly dealt with it, and it's just gonna keep making things worse. So she offers up the name of a therapist and just like, here you go, like, call this person, get some help. And Kate calls out, like, is this an ultimatum? Like, do I have to see this or else? She's like, no, this isn't an ultimatum. This is me wanting to get you help. But I can't put my daughter in that kind of, like, dangerous situation while her dad is still looking for custody. So I mean, it is a thing that we need to deal with. So just think about it. So cutting back again to now, she ends up beating up a few more guys at a bar, doesn't get any information. She's like, all right, damn it, that sucks. So then we go to an art restoration lab. They're looking at a painting, and there's this guy standing there just being like, so you find anything? And he's like, nothing yet. And he's like, well, screw it, I don't want to wait. And he just starts cutting up the painting, and either on the underside of it or literally behind it is a map where he's like, aha, the stories were true. Now who's clever? Eisenstad. So we get a page of Kate taking out her anger on a boxing punching bag. And we see like the different traumatic moments from her life flashing before her eyes. And then we see that she's punched it so hard her hands are bloody. She's just like, okay, yeah, maybe I've got some issues. But then a video call comes in from Bet, and she's like, oh, hey, where have you been? I've been trying to get in contact with you. And she's like, oh, no, I've been busy. What's up? And Bet says, well, after our little fight with Spider Guy, I've got broken ribs, so I'm out of commission for like 5 weeks. But I can be your dude in the chair. And as such, I've already got some information here. Did you know that the painting that was stolen from the locations, it was nowhere near the most expensive painting, and they were both done by the same artist named Eisenstad. So at that point, Kate's like, all right, well, that does seem like a big deal. So I guess let's look into this Eisenstad guy. And she goes ahead and signs off, but as she does so, she drops the therapy card on the ground, and Beth sees it. She's like, oh, I think you dropped something. What's that? And she's like, nothing. Bye. Click. So then we go to the lair of the wolf spider, where we see him talking on the phone to his beneficiary. And the wolf spider's like, I've narrowed it down. I know what the last two are. And one of them's in public, kinda. The other one's in a private collection. Private one should be easy as hell. Public one's going to be complicated. But I can definitely get it done. And we see the places that he's marked on the map are Arkham Asylum and the Kane family estate. So, yep, the Kane's got another Eisenstad. Of course they do. This was a really fast-paced issue. I feel like by the time I was done it, I was like, oh, that's it? There's nothing more? And that's not a bad thing per se, but it does... I think I felt the same way about the last issue as well, because a huge part of it was just the Rockefort art of like the dream sequence. So I do feel like this story is being really stretched out, and I'm not sure why that is yet. And I'm hoping that it's going to be a thing of we're trying to tell like this bigger picture thing rather than we just don't know how to properly pace this story arc because it's just a bunch of different art thieves. Like if this story arc wraps up in the next, I'd say 3 issues, I think the pacing is going to be horrible because it doesn't feel like it actually did anything for so long. But I mean, I can't say that until we actually get there. All I'm saying is now is it feels really decompressed. So yeah, I'd say this is probably, I'll give it a 7. It's all right. It's not great. It's just kind of an in the middle thing there, but it is at least doing something with the characters. It's bringing up like, no, you've had trauma, deal with it. I like that aspect. I like characters taking the time to say like, I've had a bloody history. It's not just something that goes away as soon as the next issue comes out. It's something that we actually have to deal with over these multiple things, and actually facing down the trauma and doing something about it. Yeah, that's great. That's a good way to take the story. I'm down for that. But yeah, no, I just wish it would be a little bit faster with whatever it's doing with Wolf Spider. Harley Quinn number 3, written by Amanda Connor and Jimmy Palmiotti, art by Chad Hardin. So last issue, it was a whole Poison Ivy thing. We got a bunch of dogs and stuff are now living with Ivy. It's up. Recapping Harley Quinn is a fool's errand, and I refuse to take part in it. Anyway, this issue picks up. Harley is in some sort of Coney Island like horror attraction. It's filled with like monsters and zombies and stuff like that. And as she's going through the ride, all of a sudden there's a guy with a shotgun, and Harley's like, oh wow, this guy looks really freaky. And then she realizes, oh wait, it's a real guy. He takes a shot, misses, and then Harley steals the gun from him, and shoots him, just straight up kills him in this ride. And as they get off the ride, Harley's like, oh, hey, talking to the ride attendant, I left you something really spooky inside. And he's like, please tell me that's ketchup. So her assassination attempts are still going on, but on top of that, it's Valentine's Day. She hates the idea because this is her first Valentine's Day without Mr. J. So she sees like a couple making out on a park bench, and she's like, get a room. There's a literal storm cloud over her head as she walks down the boardwalk until finally she gets to Big Tony, who's sitting with a bouquet of flowers on the porch, I guess, the stoop. And she's like, hey, are those for me? And he's like, well, they may as well be. You can have them. And he's like, oh, okay, what's going on? And he's like, oh, well, I wanted to get these for Queenie, but I was playing hard to get. And so she stopped trying to get me, and now she's on a date with some other guy. And I don't know what to do about it. So hands over the flowers, and he goes off all sad. And she's like, well, I could be your Valentine. And he's like, psh, I don't want anybody else's pity. So we have Harley in a bathtub later on, and there's a bunch of like romance stuff on the TV, and she's like, God, this sucks. Valentine's Day is literally the worst. I miss my pudding. And she's talking to the beaver and just like, oh, well, I love you. Doesn't that count? And she's like, no, I need someone who's alive with like flesh and blood and stuff like that. Someone ready for commitment. And she looks over all the plants of poison ivy left. And there's one of them that has a little sticky note on it that says, for finding love. And she's like, oh, what's this? And it has little berries on it. She takes out a berry and she eats it. And she's like, what's the worst that could happen? So her phone rings, and on the other end is the therapist job that she's been looking for. It's decided to hire her on, and she's like, fantastic. Now I don't have to worry about making money. Everything's going to be great. I'm going to go out and I'm going to treat myself. I'm going to head down to a local singles bar, and I'm going to get laid. So she goes down, and as she's on the way down, there is a bus that is transporting dangerous criminals. Like, it's a correctional bus. And the guy's just like, oh, these are like some top-tier psychos that I'm driving here, man. But don't worry, nothing's going to get in my way. And then Harley crosses the street, and we see this aroma coming off of her, which immediately this guy slams on the brakes, just says, I'm in love. And the bus crashes into a nearby building, freeing all the prisoners. And as they all step out, each of them just says, like, do you smell that? It smells like hay. And one's like, no, it smells like sandalwood. And the other's like, it smells like weed. Oh, where is this beautiful scent coming from? And they all trace it back to Harley, and Harley's like, what are you guys all looking at? And he's like, oh, you, I'm in love. I love you so much, and you're mine. I'll make you mine. And she's like, oh, geez, okay, this is bad. So all these hardened criminals are now after her. She starts running down the street, getting to a hardware store. And the hardware guy's like, sorry, door's closed. And she just rams a shopping cart through it. And as soon as she gets in, the guy inside is like, hey, will you marry me? And he's just like, okay, fight off those other guys. And sure, why not? So immediately the dude running the hardware store has like giant blades made from the shattered glass of the door. And he's just fighting off criminals left and right. Harley makes her way down to the hammer section as the criminals finally overtake the hardware guy. And we see Harley set up a full thing. She got a tool belt. She got a weed whacker. She set up a propane tank with a torch in it and a bunch of boxes of screws and nails around it. That is forward-thinking, homicidal nature there. So she starts fighting them all off one at a time. She takes them out with like a nail gun with the weed whacker, stuff like that. She drives a screwdriver into one of their heads, and she finally gets down to just one left. He is holding the propane tank in his hand, and he's got a nail gun in the other. So he starts firing off nails. She lowers down a welder's mask to defend herself, and then she throws an axe into the propane tank, which explodes, killing him very gruesomely, while she's hiding out in like a steel drum. And just like, oh boy, that's crazy. Turns out there was one more criminal left who was just holding back from everything else, and she's like, hey, what's up with the weird like zombie affection thing going on for me? And he's just like, well, I mean, I'm a pervert by trade. I don't know what about these guys, but I personally think you smell delicious. So she ends up beating him up a little bit more, and she's like, all right, whatever, we're done. As she walks out, there's a cop standing there, female cop, who's like, miss, please drop the wrench. And then immediately she just starts making out with Harley, and she's just like, well, I don't even know what happened there. I'm not even into women, but like, you just smell like the best donuts ever. And Harley's like, smell, it's the berries. It must be the berries. So she starts running her way home, trying to avoid more people on the way back. Finally, she gets back. She takes the potted plant and a bungee cord, makes a makeshift it's catapult, I guess you want to call that, slingshot, better term, and sends it flying out into a nearby sea lion exhibit at the zoo. And then she just falls back on her bed as Big Tony comes up into her room. And immediately I was like, no, don't come near. I'm irresistible. And Big Tony's like, that's a bit much, but hey, good for you having some self-confidence. And she's like, oh, okay, well, I guess it wore out if you're not, thinking of that anymore. So at this point, Tony's like, hey, remember that bouquet I gave you earlier? I'm going to go fight for Queenie. I'm going to go down and I'm like, going to show her I really mean this relationship. I really want her. And she's just like, yeah, no, totally. By the way, here's one last of this berry plant that I have here. Go ahead and take it. I think it'll really help your cause. And he's like, oh, hey, thanks. So the comic ends with Harley down in her backyard, just playing with the dog, saying, oh, this is all the affection I'll need. This is unconditional love. It doesn't have to be somebody romantic. You can just be someone who enjoys spending time with you. And as she takes the dogs out for a walk, she passes by Tony, who is not only being squeezed and hugged by Queenie, but also by Queenie's date, who of course was there at the same time. And Tony's like, geez, make it stop. And that's the issue. It's good. It's a good issue. I mean, it's a standalone little Valentine's Day issue. Nothing that bad about it. I don't think that it's doing any, the jokes are fine. The characterization of Harley feels fine. I don't have a problem with any of it. It's all good. It's just not quite like my type of book right now. I don't know what I really want from it. But I see the humor in it. The art is good. Harley's writing is fine. Even some of the situations they get into are somewhat clever, the way that it's all set up here. I think it's a fine book. It's just not my type of book, I think is the biggest thing. So I'm going to say this is, objectively, I'm going to give it a 6.5. It's maybe a little subjective as well, but it's fine. It's an okay book. It's definitely a one-shot, though. You don't need to read this for other stuff, probably. But it's just... How many times can I say it's fine? Red Hood and the Outlaws, number 28, written by James Tynion IV, art by Steven Segovia. So, do you remember, back in the second arc, the Starfire space arc, we had a girl named Isabel, who was Jason's girlfriend, romantic interest at the time. And then she got attacked by the Joker and she disappeared from the story. Whatever happened to her? That's what this issue is. So we pick up in Gotham, where Isabel is just finishing up a date with a guy named Jonathan. And Jonathan wants to come in and she's like, oh, not tonight. And he's just like, look, Isabel, I know my feelings for you are true. I want this to work, but it seems like you're still waiting on someone. Well, I'm waiting on you. So figure it out. And then he just leaves. And she comes in, she sighs, and she's like, what am I doing? And then all of a sudden, a bunch of robots show up. And they're like, Isabel, deploying message. And it starts up a message, which gets a hologram, Star Wars style, of Red Hood. And she's just like, Jason? Is that you? And he's like, yeah, baby, it's me. Hey, I got a hot date planned for you, a private resort island called Elysium. There's a private plane just down at the docks. Come on down. And she's like, why would I go with you? I nearly died the last time that you and I even met. And he's just like, look, things got complicated. I don't want to talk about it, but I do want to explain everything to you if you come with me. I promise you, this is just a normal ass trip. Nothing weird is going to happen. And then we get a page of 12 hours later on Elysium, where they're surrounded by robots with all their weapons out. And Isabel's like, Jason, I'm going to kill you. And Jason's like, yeah, that's fair. So then we cut to the in-between. They arrive on Elysium, this beautiful island. Jason comes up, starts the full seductive act. He's like, yeah, it's almost as beautiful as you. And she's like, stop it, Jason. I just can't. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. We need to talk about all of this stuff that happened before. And at least we'll just be the two of us. And he's like, yeah, about that. And then we cut over to Arsenal and Starfire, who are also on the island. Starfire's wearing some holographic gear in order to make it look like she's human. But she, like, hates it. She's like, why should I have to hide myself? And it's like, oh, I don't know, maybe because we're fugitives and we are wanted by everybody. So, yeah, we should probably stay conspicuous. Meanwhile, Starfire's just, like, changing her hair and skin color repeatedly. And he's just like, yeah, no, super conspicuous. So at that point, Roy Harper meets up with the rest of the group. All of them talk, and he specifically lays out Elysium, private island, not owned by any government. There is no law enforcement here. You got to be super rich to even make it onto the island, and people can just do whatever they want. I hacked a bank account to make it look like I was rich, and that's the whole reason we're here. But we are here specifically to party. So then cut to a back room deep underneath Elysium. There's a guy named Midas who is there, and he's like, hey, that's Red Hood and his gang. They're on our island. And like he's talking to a robot guy, and the robot guy's like, oh yeah, it is them. I mean, it might just be a coincidence. They might just be here to party. And Midas is like, that's stupid. You're stupid. If they're here to break up my criminal empire I've built on this island. Screw them. We're going to get to them before they can get to us. So at that point, we see big dance party going on in the middle of Elysium. And Jason's like, hey, I really missed this. This was fun. And immediately Isabel's like, Jason, this was never the problem. If this was all our life was, yeah, I'd have no problem with it either. But like, you put me in these dangerous situations. You brought me up into space. I was attacked by a killer clown. How do you expect me to deal with that? And Jason's like, I don't have a good answer for that, but like, yeah, keep dancing. So then we cut over to Starfire and Arsenal. Arsenal goes in and like starts kissing Starfire, and then he's immediately yanked away by this huge dude who's like, hey, I got a super yacht sitting out in the back. How about you and I go there and I can do some messed up things with you? And she's like, what kind of messed up things? And then the guy starts whispering in her ear, to which Starfire's eyes turn green and she just immediately snaps the dude's arm. And then Starfire goes, grabs Isabel and be like, men, right? And Isabel's like, and how? So at this point, Jason and Arsenal are talking, and Arsenal's like, dude, you really like this girl, huh? And he's like, yeah. I look at her and it's like, she's the only girl on the dance floor. And Arsenal's like, it's because she is, bro. Everyone else left. Where'd everyone go? And that's when Midas steps out being like, hey, I know who you are. I know you're Red Hood and gang. I'm not going to let you mess up my criminal empire. And Jason's like, wait a minute, you're Midas. You got into a bunch of fights with Susie Sue. I totally know about you. And he's like, cool. I'm glad that people know about me. But like, yeah, I'm definitely going to kill you guys. And he's just like, oh, not before we kill you. This guy, he killed a bunch of billionaires and stuff and even killed their families so that there'd be no heirs. That's how he made his fortune. And now what? This is some kind of death trap? And he's like, no, this is literally just a party island. But what, you didn't know that? All right, well, I got an army, and then he releases a whole bunch of robots. We get that opening page thing of, Jason, I'm going to kill you, that's fair. And then a whole big fight scene pops out. Arsenal goes to the coat check to get his bag with all of his gear in it. The robots start attacking Isabel, saying, we were told there was an alien in your group. We figure it's you, but you're going down pretty easy. And then Starfire's like, nope, it was me, and just immediately evaporates like all the robots. Jason swoops in to save Isabel with his magic flame swords, to which Arsenal's like, hey, Isabel, here's one of the guns from the arc that you were in. And she's like, oh, all right, I know how to handle this. Just starts firing at the robots. And before you know it, like, immediately they've taken out pretty much all the robots. Midas has already bailed. He's like, yeah, no, they're going to beat us. Like, that's super obvious. I knew that from the get-go. They got an alien on their side, man. So we're just going to bail. We're going to say this island is done for. We're not going to deal with it. Take me to Island 1, known as the Golden Hind, which is an awful name. And as the Outlaws and Isabel stand over all the robots, immediately Jason's like, all right, gang, we've got ourselves a new mission. We got to take out Midas and whatever criminal empire he's got going on. We will make this happen. And then Jason turns to Isabel, and Isabel's like, yeah, no, I get it. Team to the rescue. Yeah, that's great. Super. Nothing's going to happen, right, Jason? Jason's like, look, it'll only take a few days, and then I promise you we can make this work. And Isabel's like, nah, I don't think we can. Look, all this time I was waiting for you to come back because of like the excitement, the intrigue. I was hoping that you could come back and we could have like this normal life together. But now I realize that I've just been waiting to give myself permission to have a normal life. And yeah, this is your life. This is mine. It's maybe eventually one day you can end your fight. Doubt it. But if it does, we'll do the Batman Begins thing. You just, if you give up Batman, you come talk to me. But like, for now, this is goodbye. And she gives him a kiss and she walks off, which, where the hell was she going? But then we see she's next day back in Gotham City and she's on the phone with Jonathan saying, hey, Jonathan, I did some thinking and I finally know what I want. And Jonathan's like, and the other guy, he knows what he wants. And she's like, yep, he's a vigilante. Yeah, he's going to keep doing that. Anyway, let's get some dinner. So, yeah, I mean, this is Tynion's last issue. I believe next time's Will Pfeiffer, if I believe the name correct. Yep, Will Pfeiffer. I'm not gonna say I'm disappointed by Tynion's run as a whole, but it does feel like he didn't really say much of anything. And as we hit this final issue, it's more of just like let's just wrap up this little plot point we had before, and then also like say something about how Red Hood's fight is never ending to some regard, but like not even. I don't know. This issue is definitely like a skippable one. It's not something you really need. It doesn't feel like it's a part of the previous arc at all, but it does feel like a nice little capper, a little nightcap to everything Tynion was doing with Red Hood for like the past, 8 issues before that? Not even. So yeah, I'm going to say this one is probably like it's a 6.5. And the only thing that I'd say holds it from that 7 is that I put a lot of humor on Midas's voice. He's not actually that funny or self-aware. I kind of wish he would have been, though. I kind of wish he would have been a little bit of like the humorous bad guy. I think that would have worked better here. But if they are setting up Midas as like a continuing threat for the next few issues, then yeah, we'll see. I don't think they are, though. Looking ahead at the next issue here, I'm pretty sure this is just totally separate. Anyway, yeah, it's like a 6.5. Not great, not awful, just an average issue. Green Lantern New Guardians, number 28, written by Justin Jordan, art by Brad Walker. Start of a new arc called The Light and the Fire. And, yeah, completely separate. We just pick up on this random-ass planet in the middle of nowhere, and there's some sort of ritual going on where the children have to pick a rock out of this bin. And the parents are like, don't worry, he's not going to pick the special rock. We don't have to worry about that. And the kid picks out a rock, and wouldn't you know, it's the special rock. And he has been chosen, and the parents are all upset. And the child is walked away from his parents up onto this hill where there's this giant pillar of light. And he steps up to it, and inside the light is this godlike figure. It's just assumed to be named Marast. And Marast reaches over to one of the other children, places his hand on his head, and the kid's head explodes. So, child sacrifice, as you do. And the god turns to face the kid we focused on, and he's like, I know, this is just how it's got to be. And he places his hand on the kid's head. And then all of a sudden, the god's head just spurts out blood. And we see coming down from above is this dude named the God Killer, or at least he calls himself that, and he's like, this is your God, huh? This is the protector, this is your faith, screw this, this guy enjoys child sacrifice, and you should never worship a guy like that. That is no bueno. Screw him, he's dead now. And he just straight up decapitates Marast. And he turns to everybody else, he's like, we can give you your freedom, that's what I give you. And there's like, oh, okay, but that was kind of all our society had, what are we supposed to do? And Gakko's like, I don't know. But like, here's the thing. You can figure it out and start with protecting your kids. Okay, bye. So we cut over to Space Sector 1 near the Source Wall. We meet up with a Guardian. By the way, this issue focuses a lot with the Guardians having names. I feel like we're trying to make an actual push to each of them having their own distinct personality and like name to go with it. I ain't gonna bother. They're going to be the Guardians unless I can specifically remember the name and personality they have otherwise. But anyway, one of them named Quaros apparently went way close to the source wall to do some extra investigation after Relic happened. And he's on this planet, and it seems he has come across a mother box. That's going on. Meanwhile, in Sector 2897, Carol and Kyle are literally making bets about, like, whether or not they remember the names of the Guardians. Apparently, Carol didn't even know they were down a Guardian this whole time. So they're just making jokes about it. They say the other one's names of Zala and Palco and stuff like that. Either way, they make jokes about how no one can tell them apart. But they arrive on this planet called Kalosa. And Kyle's like, okay, cool. Why are we here? What's going on with Kalosa? And the Guardian's like, well, it's not really a major planet. It's still in like farming sort of tech and stuff like that. But there is something special here because of what it could become. See, suddenly there's this new religious sect going around called the Light and the Fire. And it is going around basically inducting itself as a peaceful empire based off this religion that it's taken like huge swaths of planets, and it is essentially bringing them into their fold. And Kyle's like, all right, yeah, let me guess. With a name like Light in the Fire, they're burning the non-believers or whatever. And Guardian's like, no, like they're serious. It's a peaceful religion. Like they're super serious about the peace stuff. But yeah, there is some stuff that we got to investigate with it. So immediately they're attacked by like a fireball flying through space. And it's like, yeah, no, seems peaceful. We already got someone attacking us. And it looks like there's some rich people on one side of the wall and some poor people on the other side of the wall. And the rich people are fighting to keep the poor people out. So screw that. We got something to say. So Kyle immediately runs in and starts like stopping all the fireballs from going. But then as soon as he's about to start fighting, a person steps up and he's like, stop. Hi, I represent the fire and the light. Stop fighting. That's not what we want. That's not what she wants. And Carol's like, I don't know who she is, but like those people are attacking the lesser fortunate people. So like that's a whole thing. And at that point, Kyle's like, this person who does get a name briefly, but I can't remember what it is. Her name's Kalander. She is Starfire's race. So we see that she's basically saying like, look, our religion is saying like, peace. It's saying that we will not fight. And this situation that you have wrongly sussed out, the other side are the non-believers. This side is the believers, and the non-believers are attacking our people because of our religion. Like that's what's going on. But we don't want to fight back against them because all that does is give them reason to fight back against us all the harder. Take a look at what you did just by attacking. And Kyle takes a look over. And he sees a whole bunch more troops have already started lining up. And he's like, all right, fair enough. Well, Carol, do you think you can take the ones on the left? I'll take the ones on the right. And Calander's like, did you not hear a word I just said about not fighting? So one of the Guardians named Goran steps up and he's like, hi, I'm not here to fight. And they're like, okay, well, what's up? What do you want? And he's like, well, I'm a Guardian of the universe. And please stop attacking these people. And the guy on the other side is like, well, I'm a guardian of my planet, my people, and this religion's come in and started like taking over the planet, and that's not something I like. They're different. So, no, I'm going to fight against them. And Gurgen's like, well, I mean, surely the planet is big enough to take multiple ways of thought. It's not something that everyone has to think the same, right? To which the other guy says, open fire, and they just immediately unlaunch everything they've got on this city. So it's like, all right, well, that's a problem. We can't possibly stop all these fireballs at once. So Kalander says, look, I'm not going to fight them, but that doesn't mean I can't defend myself. And she immediately unleashes like a huge fireball power that knocks tons amounts of these fireballs out of the sky. And she's like, oh, okay, you got powers. Great, cool, awesome. Well, let me see if I can't stop them from firing more. And Kyle gets up into the sky and he uses the indigo light, compassion, to get all of the people who are attacking them to stop. And they're like, oh God, I can't believe it. I'm so sorry. So Kyle comes down to the ground and Carol's like, why did you pass out? Like, that seems unnormal. And he's like, well, I affected a couple thousand soldiers and all of their hatred and fear. Like, compassion flows both ways. I felt that stuff. And it was a bit much. But no, I'm cool. Don't worry about it. So at that point, we see how many fireballs managed to make it past the barrier. Like their entire city is now essentially on fire. All of these believers of the light and fire. And Kyle's like, I can go, I can stop, I can at least try to help. We can like rebuild or something. And Calandra's like, hey, no, like another time, another place. This would have been cool, but like right now you just need to sit back and watch. And we see this fireball come down out of the sky and just immediately start putting out all the fires and simultaneously repairing the buildings to exactly as the way they were. And Kyle's like, okay, that's not something even I can do. And the Guardians are like, yeah, we have no idea. Like the amount of talent that must have, it's incredible. It's beyond any of our capabilities. And Calandra's like, yeah, no, we know what you guys came here thinking that we were praising some like generic ass like fire and light sort of thing. No, we were praising a very specific entity, and that is our god, the god Zal, Exal, which is the Starfire's god's names. I keep on blanking on her. I don't want to say Korrigarians, that's wrong, but it's something close to that. I don't know, can't remember. Either way, it's literally, we see Zal. It is actually her in physical form. So then we cut over back to Space Sector 0170, where the God Killer is there again. He's literally just killing a random god as we see him sitting there. And he's like, yeah, I know, you're a god. It's always the same. So then this other God Killer steps up and being like, hey, first of the free. And he's like, what do you want, free man? And he's like, first of the free. We found her. We found the Destroyer of Worlds. And he's like, really? All right, cool. Send everyone. We're going to go take her out. So, yeah. That's a whole thing. I actually really appreciate what this book has to say. It opens up feeling like it's going to be just like a YouTube atheist video, and God, that is the last thing I want. But then it pivots and it shows like, okay, but here is a religion, a religion based off this deity that is actually not only real, but is benevolent, is good, and is actively helping its people. And I can already see the faction here is going to be the God Killer is going to want to come in and get rid of this peaceful God in the name of just, no gods, period. Religion, bad. I like this idea that it's taking a more nuanced look at it, that it's saying, no, there is room for compassionate religion. There is room for like believing in a higher power and using that to do good things. But I also like the fact that they're like the religion that was already existing on this planet was one that was willing to open fire upon the new one. So clearly there's bad as well. I like this. I like this sort of nuanced look here. My problem with the last arc is that it went way too fast. So I really hope this one manages to stretch it out and that we get a full like several issues to examine this and say, okay, what does this mean? What are the ramifications? How do we handle that? So overall, I'd say writing wise, this one probably gets like 7.5. I think it's actually very well written. It takes a very nuanced look at things. Hopefully we can keep that up, and hopefully we can examine it a bit further. So keep at it, Justin. Wonder Woman number 28, written by Brian Azzarello, art by Goran Sudzuka and Cliff Chiang. So last issue, there was a bunch of stuff, but Wonder Woman is taking Artemis to get her to help to hunt down Zola. Meanwhile, Zola is with Dionysus, who is taking her out into the middle of the woods, and then we see that Cassandra's arrived with a Minotaur. Also, Firstborn's broken free of his chains. Whole lot of stuff. Anyway, this issue picks up in London. Artemis is going down in the subway, just doing the full hunt thing. Hermes is like, I don't trust her. Like, it was clearly part of the god's plans, and just like, yeah, well, we didn't trust you either, and look how that shook out. So let's go ahead and just trust her as much as we can. And so Artemis managed to track Zola sent to the subway seat where Dionysus was, and Wonder Woman's like, okay, so she got on the subway. It's just like, no. He wouldn't take public transportation. My guess, it's on him. He's somewhere else. So at that point, he says, well, we just have to follow Dio's tail, to which Hermes says, you mean trail? And she says, no, he has a literal fox tail. Here's some of his fur. Let's go. So back in Province, where Dio is, he's going through the woods calling out for Zola, being like, hey, sorry, I sometimes forget that you're a normal human and you don't enjoy seeing people being transformed into pigs. My bad. And so Zola comes running through the wood and she's like, all right, whatever, we got to run. And so she just runs, and then Dio turns around and sees the Minotaur just charging full speed through the woods at them. Meanwhile, on Olympus, Firstborn is just grappling with Apollo, saying like, I'm going to kill you, and I'm going to take Olympus, and then I'm going to start killing all the other gods until Olympus is only mine. And Apollo's like, all right, you want my power? Take it. And he blasts Firstborn with his firepower, just being like, that's only a taste of my power. And Firstborn's like, seriously, dude? I've been burned alive since the day I was born. Is that all you got? And Apollo's like, no. So then back in the woods, we see Dio's not running. He's just like standing up against the Minotaur. And Zola's like, are you going to turn him into a pig? And he's like, nah, I'm the god of wine and madness, and also the vines. And so he uses the vines to wrap up the Minotaur, get him all bound up. And he's like, all right, well, now I can turn his blood into either wine or honey. Which would you prefer, Zola? But then the Minotaur immediately snaps free of the vines, punches Dio twice, and then the third time, instead of like a whoomp sound effect, it's a crack sound effect. So Dio ain't doing so hot. Meanwhile, at the table where they originally were sitting at, Artemis, Wonder Woman, and gang teleport in, and Artemis immediately was like, yep, he was here. As you could see, he set up the snacks and all that. He was always good for a good cheese dish. I've got a scent. He's going out there into the woods, and immediately they hear the roar of the Minotaur, and Artemis is like, at last, a hunt. So she immediately runs off. Wonder Woman's like, okay, look, Hermes, you can keep up with her. I'll follow you. Hera, you're only mortal. You stay here. And she's like, what? Okay. And she just starts eating the crackers. So Dio's out for the count. The Minotaur yells. And then he just picks up Dio and starts walking off. And Zola's like, oh, he wasn't after me. He was after Dio. All right, well, I guess I can't just leave him there. So she starts giving chase after the Minotaur as well. Back on Olympus, Apollo's unleashing the full might of his sun blast on Firstborn. Doesn't do anything. So Cassandra's now got Dio wrapped up, walking into her little jet thing. Meanwhile, her guards and the hyena army are standing guard outside. Apollo shows up and just starts throwing moon daggers into him, just being like, oh, I have heard so many yelps for help from these sort of creatures. I love it. And immediately Wonder Woman's in on the fight too. Cassandra's like, oh, hey, look at that. We got 3 gods against my entire army. Well, they're not going to last. Let's go. And immediately the second in command's like, but what about our army? And it's like, what do you mean army? They're zealots. They're acolytes. They just believe in us. We'll make more. Let's go. So they all hop onto the ship. They immediately fly off. And one of them's like, not so fast. And so she flies up and grabs onto the bottom of it. Meanwhile, inside, Dio's woken up. He's strapped down. And Cassandra's like, I am going to force you to bring me to Olympus so that I may have an audience with them up there. And Dio's like, okay, I'll let you do it. I don't even care. Like, you could have just asked me. I totally would have been glad to do that. So back on Olympus, Apollo's totally out of it. Firstborn's finally standing up. And Firstborn's like, you don't get it, man. My hatred burns hotter than you could ever make. So yeah, this mountain is my birthright. I'm going to get rid of you. I'm going to kill all the other gods until it's only me up here. And he picks up Apollo and starts snapping his back with his pure strength. And then we see Cassandra's ship actually coming up to the top of Olympus. And Apollo says, over my dead body. And the whole of Olympus just explodes. Just top down, huge explosions. So big things happening. Honestly, this was a very, very, very fast read for me. I think it was, usually the average comic for me takes a little under 10 minutes. This one was under 5 for sure. There's just sparsely any dialogue. It moves very quickly. It's all told in the visuals. It's not bad, but it does feel like not a lot is done until you actually come back and look at it and see no, every plot essentially wrapped up there. Artemis completed her hunt. Zola and the Minotaur thing was done. Dio did that. And now Olympus is blown up because Firstborn escaped. It got a lot done. It just read very quickly. So yeah, overall, I'd say this is probably, it's not like my favorite issue. It doesn't have any moments I would really point to and say that's awesome. So I would say this probably is just a flat 7, but it is well done. I don't want to not give it credit for that. It does a decent amount of plot moving forward at a very brisk pace. Animal Man number 28, written by Geoff Lemire, art by Raphael Albuquerque. So last issue we had essentially everything was going wrong for all of our heroes. Maxine was grabbed by Brother Blood. Shepherd was killed. Buddy was fighting against one of the big dudes, one of the big members of the parliament. And I can't believe I'm blanking on her name, but the wife is currently in jail. So in the red, we continue to see Brother Blood is just threatening Maxine. And it's made very clear over the course of the comic because he just keeps threatening her, saying hey, you better give me all the power of the red or else I'm going to do bad things to you. I'm going to hurt you. And Maxine is like, no. It's very obvious that Brother Blood doesn't actually have the power to fight Maxine. He's actually incapable of forcing the red out of her. So he's basically trying to force her to do it willingly. But we see Shepherd with some of the last of his strength call over his little bird creature and then whispers something to it and sends it away. So meanwhile, Buddy's fighting against the totem. And Totem's just everything you touch is ruined, buddy, because you're awful at everything. You suck so hard. And he just blasts him some more. And Buddy's like, you don't know the first thing about my family or love. You just a bully. That's all you're just a bully. So he keeps on getting zapped. And the Totem's just I don't know how you have so much power, dude. But I mean, I'm still going to beat you and we're going to kill your daughter. That's how it's going to work. You're not going to win this. And immediately, Buddy's just as long as you live, Maxine will be in danger. So, gotta end this. And he rips off the guy's horns, seemingly, rips off the guy's horns and stabs them both back into his chest, seemingly killing him. And Buddy then de-transforms out of his big monstrous form. And the little bird thing comes and it arrives at Buddy. And it starts speaking in Shepherd's voice. And he's just Butterbaker, I'm hoping you can hear this. I'm happy you're still alive. My messenger found you. I put a little bit of my power into this. Little Wing needs you. Come and help her. And then the bird starts transforming into this giant raven that Buddy hops on and says, take me to her. So back at Brother Blood, he picks up Socks and just hey, I already killed Shepherd. I'm going to rip off all your cat's arms if you don't do what I say. And Socks is don't do it. Don't listen to him. So at that point, he starts threatening her and just being do what I say, you little worm. And she says, I'm not a little worm, I'm Animal Girl. And she uses the power of a gorilla to throw Brother Blood across the field. And Brother Blood can feel his power waning. He's wait a minute, something's wrong. I'm not doing so hot anymore. And he's yes, something's wrong. You're a bad guy in my world. And she just starts kicking him, using powers of the kangaroo and whatnot. She manages to get him down long enough to run over to Shepherd. And Shepherd's hey, you did good. You did a good job. I'm dying though. And she says don't worry, Shepherd, you're going to be okay. And Socks is what are you doing, man? Don't do this. And Shepherd's hey, don't worry about it. I'm cool. I'm good. And you can go over and you can beat him right now. And Maxine is I don't care about him. She puts her hand into the floor of the red and just makes Shepherd a new body. He's 100% just back to good. And immediately Maxine is I did it. I saved him, but I am feeling pretty weak now. And Socks is you shouldn't have done that. That took too much power up. And now you're weak. Brother Blood can get to you. So one of the Splinter Folk comes in, tries to attack Maxine. Shepherd just smacks him, takes his head right off. And he's all right, well, I think we did it. I think we finally won. But Brother Blood stands back up and he's you think you won? I've got one last trick up my sleeve. And he reaches up into the red and pulls down Ellen. That's her name, Ellen. Through the jail cell down into the red. And she was just talking to her lawyer at that point. So Ellen comes down, Brother Blood's got her, and just be if you don't give me the power of the red, I'm going to get your mother right in front of you. And she says let my mommy go. And Shepherd's hold on, man. He's not bluffing. He's got really messed up eyes. And Ellen's don't do anything he says, honey. He's awful. And Blood's I'm going to kill her. And then a voice off panel says, the hell you will. And in flies Buddy Baker on the back of this raven. And he just jumps off and kicks Brother Blood in the face. And he says, sorry, I'm late. I had to go to space. So he starts beating the crap out of Brother Blood. He's you threatened my family after everything they've been through. How dare you? And Blood starts crying out for mercy. He's stop, please, no. Splinter Folk tries coming after Ellen. She just kicks it in the nuts. So at that point, a whole big epic battle breaks out between Blood and Animal Man. Maxine tries to run in to help, and he's like, don't worry about it, Maxine. I got this. This is not your fight. It was mine. And we see the final big climactic punch Animal Man and Brother Blood throw at each other. They're both knocked down, but Animal Man gets up first. His family helps him to his feet. And meanwhile, Brother Blood is completely out of power, and he is immediately beset upon by all of the pirates that were working with Maxine. So Maxine goes and hugs her mom. She's like, I'm sorry. I was just trying to bring Cliff back to life. That's all I was trying to do. I need him back. I don't want him to be dead. We can all be together again. And, but he's just like, look, I know I miss him too, but he is gone and we're still here. And I promise you, I'm never going to leave you again. Never again. And the final panel, as he says that, we see watching him through some sort of portal thing is the Bridge Walker, who, of course, he told that he would take the place of 2 issues ago. So that's the second to last issue. There's last issues next month, where we will see exactly what happens there. Apparently, some of the art is done by Jeff Lemire himself. I really look forward to seeing that. Yeah, no, it's a solid wrap-up to the arc. It works with everything we've had before. We say, the totem is killed by Buddy because he got new superpowers, and then everything just kind of flows out from there. Makes sense. It all feels pretty satisfying. So, yeah, no, I hope next issue kind of wraps up the things that were going on in the upper world of like, he won this award for his acting and whatnot. Is there any way that they can be just a normal family? What happens when Buddy actually has to leave now? So, yeah, I'm intrigued at the very least. Beyond that, I'd say this is like a solid 8. I really do think it's a nice wrap up, a good, huge, like big stakes, big moment to wrap up the series on. I'm really down for it. So yeah, Animal Man's been great. And that's it. That's all the comics that came out from DC Comics this February 19th, 2014. And honestly, next week, I'm kind of happy that there is a larger amount. I mean, I'm not going to say keep it up, do this every week, DC, but 2 weeks in a row with only 11, I don't know. I was kind of feeling like I didn't have enough to say. So the fact that we finally got something to do next week with 14 comics, kind of down for. So, what are those 14 comics, I'm sure you're asking? Well, in no particular order, we have the following: Forever Evil Argus, Justice League Dark, Batman the Dark Knight, Catwoman, Talon, Batman/Superman, Superman, Larfleeze, Aquaman, The Flash, World's Finest, All-Star Western, Teen Titans, and the extra little cherry on top. You remember how there was Batman Joker's Daughter? I think earlier this month even. I think that was the first week of the month. They did one for Lois Lane called Superman Lois Lane. It is a one-shot that just exists because why not? So we will be taking a look at that as well. In terms of events, there's actually quite a bit going on here. I think Catwoman might still be part of Gothtopia. Fact check me on that one. I know that World's Finest and Batman Superman are both starting their own event called First Contact. We already had some preludes to this, some like prologue chapters. This is officially part 1 and part 2 going on here. Forever Evil Argus and Justice League Dark are, of course, part of Forever Evil going on. I think that's pretty much it. Talon might be a Gothtopia thing too, but I doubt it because I think it only has like 2 issues left. So they're definitely going to be wrapping that one up pretty quick. But overall, that's what's going on. In terms of anything else to pad out the runtime of this end, I don't really have anything. I'm kind of tired and I don't want to continue. So I'm just going to stop. But I guess I need to sign off first. So yeah, if you've been enjoying this, if you have anything that you want to say, go ahead and hit me up anywhere that we have a social media. There's a Discord, a Reddit, a Patreon. All the links to that stuff is in the description. I look forward to hearing from you. But yeah, that's going to do it for me. Thank you very much for watching, listening, however it is you consume this podcast. Be sure to tune in next time and give this thing 2 thumbs all the way up. And yeah, always try to remember, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.